A very good morning and welcome to Morning Express on this day, Monday. It is, and we are glad that you're here with us this morning. My name is Michael Gitonga and welcome to the show. What do we have in store for you? As usual, we're going to be going through what's making headlines on the dailies. Today would also be concentrating on, looking at what's happening in the sports arena right here on Morning Express. But that's not all.
I'll be taking a look at the U.S. elections as well, the fallout we have seen on the front page of the Standard. They say Donald Trump is isolated by world leaders. We shall take a look at how he managed to lose that seat. It's unprecedented to have a sitting president actually lose their seat. So we shall take a look at the hits and misses of his campaign, what this means now, a Joe Biden and Kamala Harris regime, what it means and what changes we expect to see. We shall have our panelists dig deeper into that and help you understand why it might be affecting you. So stay tuned for that.
Absolutely, and there's been a lot of debate regarding Donald Trump's defeat, and would like to find out from you, do you think Donald Trump should concede defeat? So far, he has not, and he's got all manner of complaints that he has put forward, saying that there are issues to do with the counting that has happened. So do you think Donald Trump should concede defeat? The hashtag is KTN Morning Express. If you'd like to reach us, you can reach Tricks at Tricks. You can reach me at Michael G. Gitonga. Would love to hear what your take is on that. Later on, we're going to be digging deeper into the U.S. elections and seeing what that is all about and what to expect also out of the U.S. now that there is a new president-elect. Do you think Donald Trump should concede defeat is the question that we're asking this morning. We'll be reading through your comments as we go along with that. But first, let's start off with some of the international dailies and what they have on their dailies. And as you can expect, it's probably awash with the U.S. The Citizen, we have Biden wins ending Trump presidency, and the Democrat Joe Biden has won the White House, U.S. media said Saturday. But of course, we do know that Donald Trump has come out to say it's not the media that announces the election and the winner, but it is the counting that does that. Let's look at, the Daily Monitor in Uganda and see what's happening. But in Uganda, it's nothing to do with the U.S. John Katumba, a mysterious 24-year-old eyeing top office. This is a young man in Uganda who has come out to declare that he would be running for presidency. Mr. Katumba says that he has managed to fund his presidential bid through savings that he had. Of course, that is likely to be news, particularly given he's a very young man and super ambitious, particularly in Uganda. We do know that Uganda is a country that has had one president for a very, very long time. I remember looking at some of the memes that were making rounds over the weekend, and they were counting the number of presidents in the U.S. against those in Uganda. And of course, in Uganda, it's been one for over 30 years. Let's look at another paper internationally, and this is the East African. Biden elected U.S. president. What U.S. election outcome means for East Africa. So if you'd like to take a wider look at what that win means, not just for the U.S., but also for East Africa, the East African has got that covered for you. Let's move on to Rwanda, and we have Rwanda today. Biden urges unity in victory speech after beating Trump. And of course, one of the things that we'd like to see, and the world is waiting to hear more from him, is what his plan is. His campaign was largely surrounding, beating Trump, and more or less it was more of a vote against Trump as opposed one for Biden. But let's see. We'd need to hear what he has in store with Kamala Harris, of course, as the vice president. And also we look at the CNN, and Trump's inner circle divided over path after Biden's victory, with Melania Trump, his wife, coming out to say, look, you can concede defeat now, but his son, Jared Kushner, saying that no, you do what you need to do, go to the Supreme Court and fight it to the bitter end. So there seems to be division even within his own inner circle, his family, with some saying he needs to concede defeat and accept and move on, with others within the same family saying, no, that's not the case. Let's fight to the bitter end. So we also have Bloomberg, which as Biden launches transition COVID plan as Trump eyes court fight. Again, we do know that one of the things that Joe Biden was very strong against what Trump did was his handling of COVID-19. Right from the beginning, we do know that Trump was denying that COVID-19 was even a reality. He went ahead and, got COVID-19 and came out saying that he is now immune to it. And that, of course, was a bone of contention, given that he was not even wearing masks, and those allied to him and those, in his camp being seen to literally ignore those World Health Organization recommendations of how to ensure that we contain COVID-19. So there you go. That's what we have on the international plane. But we're also going to take a look at what we have locally and focus on what's on the dailies locally. And at this point, I'd like to introduce the panel and the guests that we're going to have this morning. And we are joined by Honorable Arthur Odera, who's a former Member of Parliament for Teso North. Thank you for joining us, sir.
Thank you.
We're also joined by Honorable Joe Mtambo via video link, and he's a former Member of Parliament for Mwingi North. Thank you for joining us bright and early as usual. And on the Standard, the headline is isolated. That is to do with Donald Trump. But I'll skip that because we're going to be looking deeper and digging deeper into the U.S. elections and looking at its ramifications, its, what it may mean for Kenya and all that. But I'd like us to take a look at, some of what's happening locally for starters. And starting off with page 8. We do know that the Building Bridges Initiative report is out. It's been a subject of discussion. We had legislators in Naivasha last week coming together to ensure that it passes. We know that those allied to the Deputy President were not invited. This week, governors are expected to be in Naivasha to discuss the same. And I'll start with you, Honorable Odera, on your thoughts on what maybe needs to be the main points that governors should pick out from this document, given that it has some good things lined up, should it go as it is for the counties in terms of revenue. What are your thoughts on what maybe should stand out for the governors as they continue to, deliberate on this report?
I think generally, starting with the sharing of wealth argument, the governors would be pleased, I'm sure most of them, about the proposed increase in the allocation to counties, and I'm sure most Kenyans would support that, because if the increase in allocation works, it is less important who becomes president, and therefore the do-or-die approach to presidential elections will be less and less as we go forward. Additionally,
which really would say is the cradle of devolution. It's really supposed
absolutely.
to, remove attention from
Yes.
the national government to local
Yes.
government.
At
But the
this-
question
yeah.
might be, do we need a document for this to be done? Because even in the current constitution, what we have is a minimum of 15%, but nothing stops Jubilee government to giving 35% or even 50% as we speak.
Agreed. In the reality of budget making, it's a competition for resources. So no government will give you 35 if the compulsion of law is 15. So they'll give you the minimum, set by law. And therefore, if you want to compel government to give 35%, you put it in the law so that they'll give a minimum of 35%. And that is how you protect counties. And counties are more assured and can budget confidently. And people at the grassroots level everywhere across Kenya can then plan their development more meaningfully. Counties can have enough resources to do the things they do. If you consider that agriculture, health, cooperatives, movements, and a lot of other things that affect daily lives are devolved, then you need to give that kind of money. I am sure there'll be more harmony in the country. There'll be more peace. There will be uplifting of people who live below the poverty line much more meaningfully and in a much more widespread manner if that happens. However, there's also the democratic reforms that we need.
Right.
Personally, I think that the introduction of leader of official opposition in Parliament, which essentially replaces the leader of minority in Parliament, is a great thing because it comes complete with a shadow cabinet. That can only be good for democracy.
All right. Let me hear from Honorable Mtambo, particularly on the question of devolution. We do know that one of the big wins that we have as a country in Constitution 2010 is devolution. But of course, the question and the challenge has been resources and revenue. 35% is what is proposed in this new document. And your thoughts on what governors should concentrate on as they deliberate on that report?
Yes, thank you, Mike. First and foremost, allow me to correct you. Joe Mutambo is a former member of parliament for Mwingi Central, not Mwingi North.
Oh, sorry.
And I've been with you for long. That
My apologies. I think it's because of Teso North.
Secondly,
I confused that. Sorry about that.
Secondly, allow me to say hello to my former colleague.
Mr. Odera,
he's a person I've known. I respect him so much. I've worked with him. We were together in the Committee of Energy, apart from being in Parliament, and I've never seen him after we lost, both of us lost. So I want to thank KTN for bringing him to me.
Hello, Joe.
So, Karibu, it's a long time since I saw you. Going back now to the matters at hand. Mike, you know me, I always say it as it is. I know everybody is celebrating that the counties are getting 25%. I have a lot of reservation when we are giving the 25% to counties, yet we are introducing some laws which can be misused and to deny the government the revenue it so deserves. I remember we had a discussion last week, and I did pronounce myself. I am not against the youth getting the tax retrieve. But as much as we want to support our youth, we must cultivate that law in a manner that it will not be misused by business people and drive this country or make this country starve in terms of revenue collection. What do I mean, Mike? Mike, I know very well that the moment that law is anchored in the Constitution, that any person below this age bracket, call it 35, because age youth is from 1 year to 35 years. That is the bracket we are talking about. We have so many business people in our country who have children, who have their relatives, who have families. It will be very easy for them to transfer those businesses to their families, to their friends, to their sons, to their daughters, to avoid paying the taxes. And there's nothing you can do about it, because the moment it becomes a law in the Constitution, every person of any race, any person of any caliber will be allowed to do business without paying taxes for 7 years. And what I'm seeing in the future, Mike, is that it's a country with no taxes, because government collect taxes from the business people. And you know, when we are exempted from paying VAT, you are completely exempted. You will not pay VAT on your electricity bill, on your water bill, on all your bills. You will not pay VAT so long as you are you are within that bracket of that age group. So this is one concern I'm having, and as much as the governors are meeting to discuss this bill, yes, members of parliament agreed they will support it. Even me, myself, I will support it, but I will support it with my reservation being taken into account, because I love this country. And every country, each country in the world derives from collecting revenue. That is where the government gets the money from. Government do not do business. They don't own kiosks. They don't own this and that. They collect revenues to fund their affairs. The money which the president is paid, the money which the teacher is paid, the money which the doctor is paid comes from the revenue. And the moment we say KRA will not collect VAT from business people, KRA will be grounded. They will not have enough money. They will not meet their target.
Honorable Mtambo, just to understand and maybe get you clearly, are you saying that that tax break given to the youth ought to be scrapped, or do you feel that it should be there but with certain guidelines that ensure only those who deserve it get it?
How do you, the problem is the moment you make a law, Mike, how do you come up with the legislation to say it is only so and so who deserve? Then you go back to negate the same spirit of the Constitution, you will be discriminating other people. Because the moment somebody is in an age, a certain age group, which is described in the Constitution, whether he is a son of a rich person or whether he is a son of a poor person, they are in the same group and they are given that, they are given those powers by the Constitution not to pay the taxes. Whether it's a son of a priest, whether it's a son of a teacher, it doesn't matter who. The Constitution cannot say that the sons of rich people will not pay taxes. The Constitution cannot say it is only the poor. How do you say who is poor? How do you determine? So any person has got a right in the Constitution. And the moment Kenyans are given those rights in the Constitution, it will be very, very difficult. As much as we want to help our youth.
All right. All right.
We have 50 years of independence. We know, yes, very well, there are youth who have excelled in their field of business or in whatever they do, but there are also others who are struggling. But the moment we do that, Mike, what will happen in this country? We'll have no money to run our economy. And
okay.
This is
all right. We've got your point. Let me just hear from you, Honorable Odera, your thoughts on that. That seems to be a sticking point for Mheshimiwa Mtambo, the tax break and the fact that it's definitely going to mean revenue might be a problem, collection. Do you have any areas within the proposal that you feel need to be negotiated and discussed before this document is passed?
I share Joe's concern about possible misuse. However, constitution making is setting the broad law. Then you will come to a stage where you want to operationalize that law. When it comes to operationalization of the law, creating of regulations and the guidelines for implementation of that constitutional provision, that is where the concerns raised by Joe need to be addressed. And it's a normal process in lawmaking that the Constitution sets out the broad provision, then you have to operationalize it by setting out the detailed implementation. And I know that the current procurement provision of 30% for the youth, women, and the disabled is being abused to a large extent, and we need to take into account Joe's concern. However, you don't take account of that into the Constitution. You take care of it in the provision of regulations and implementation guidelines for that law. And I think that because of, if we have a concern about possible misuse, that does not take away our support for the guideline, for the constitutional
and here's the thing,
yeah.
Gentlemen, and help me think through this, because we cannot say we're not going to put laws in place, good laws, simply because we have bad implementers. And our biggest problem, even with the Constitution 2010, may not necessarily be the document itself, but those who have been given the responsibility, including with the citizenry, to ensure that that constitution is as good as it is on paper. So we cannot say we're not going to have good laws put in place simply because those who we have put in positions of overseeing that cannot do a good job. Honorable Mtambo, that would be failure on our leadership.
True, Mike, and that's why I'm having a lot of reservation with this. It doesn't matter how much, and I agree with my good friend Odera that yes, there's some processes on how to implement that law, but it has proven to be so difficult, not only in our country, but in other countries, because we may have to pass a legislation which will give guidelines on how one qualifies. But to me, once the Constitution has pronounced a youth should not pay taxes, it ends there. There's no other law which is supreme than the Constitution. And I'm trying to, being a legislator, and my good friend Odera being a legislator, he knows very well that to come up with a mechanism to say that we are going to make sure that this law is not going to be misused. This is one law which is so difficult It's just like the two-third gender rule. It has become so difficult because you don't know how to implement it. This is one law which may be very difficult to come up with a mechanism on how to implement it, because
Joe, you might want to know
that it is my constitutional right not to pay taxes. So why are you coming up with some other regulations which are telling me I should be like this, I should be born of a poor family, I should... No.
Right.
It is a Kenyan, a person
Joe might want to know.
Years and below, and it will be very difficult. I'm trying to caution the Kenyans in advance.
Right,
yes, I support BBI fully, but we need to make sure that we also make laws for the prosperity of this country. And if we do it with emotions, that we just want to pass it and get away with it, then we may harm this country in the future.
All right, Honorable Tambo, I'm going to pause you a little bit. Allow me to pause you a little bit. I want to hear, I think Honorable Odera wants to say something in that regard. And I'd like us to move on to something else, so I'll ask that you keep it brief.
I'll keep it brief. Joe, you might want to know that there's a piece of work that's going on in the AG's office, which is intent on making sure that for every corporation, for every legal person created in the Registrar of Companies and the Registrar of Business Names, that they are pursuing to know who is the beneficial owner of each and every business. And that will help us a great deal, because the beneficial owner is the window to what you're saying, that people are fronted, are put, the names appearing in the registration documents are names of young people who clearly deserve the tax break, but the real beneficial owners are behind the scenes. They are adults, they are rich people who are taking advantage of that provision. Now, if in every business we know the beneficial owner of that business, then we will deal with what you're concerned. And I share your concern clearly. All I'm saying is we must not throw away the baby with the bathwater. Let us have the law in the Constitution, and then work on ensuring that the corruption that would accompany it ordinarily is stopped. Create good regulations that govern that, and make sure that the actual beneficial owners of those corporations that benefit, those startups that can benefit from that constitutional provision, are actually youths that deserve. Silicon Valley, by the way, grew on the back of such tax breaks.
Absolutely.
And that's a shining example of how that law can help foster innovation and the creation of wealth for the young people.
Evidently, this is a document that requires a lot of discussion for it to pass through, and we'll wait and see what the governors will come up with. And, we are hoping that there would be an opportunity for the document to be discussed before it is passed through. There are those legislators who say we've been doing this for 2 years, it's too late now, let's go ahead and have it done, but that's a discussion for another day. Allow me to move on to other things that I'd like us to discuss. On page 9 of the Standard, we have medics without PPEs in a 6.2 billion KEMSA paralysis. This again becoming another sad state of affairs, because what has happened here, following alleged procurement irregularities, the items cannot be released, cannot be sold out, yet we have people in the counties suffering. We do know that now we have a second wave of COVID-19, but the sad state of affairs is that because again of issues to do with corruption, because of what we'd call bad manners, literally, we are going to have to pay with our lives, so to speak. Let me start with you, Honorable Odera, on how we need to move from this, because until we pin corruption to actual effects like death, like now this, what we're seeing right here, we rarely will deal with it.
I remember there was an investigation that was commissioned by none other than the president himself, and he gave 21 days to unearth what went on in KEMSA. I hope we will get that report soon, and that the president will act on it the way he had promised. Because if that had been taken into account and acted upon, this is part of it really. The revelation is coming now because we are having deaths of medics out, which is really, really unfortunate. Frontline staff who are helping the nation to deal with COVID and save lives are being exposed to unnecessary danger because KEMSA is not releasing the PPEs. Yet the PPEs were actually overbought. Some of them were donations from the likes of Jack Ma and so on. And it requires action at the top level. It requires action at the ministerial level. It requires action from the president. It requires action from everybody in charge of the lives of medics and the lives of Kenyans, because by extension, safety of medics also means safety of the Kenyans who are attended to by those medics.
All right, Honorable Mtambo, your thoughts on this?
Mike, it is taking us back to what I'm talking about. You know, those Ps and those procurements were made within, we had a set of laws to implement the procurement plan in our country. It is there. But look at it. Where are we today? We are in the same place I'm talking about. And I hate to take you back because we are moving forward. But just to correct a bit, because I felt I came up with this suggestion and I feel I should clear the air about it. Nothing bars any person from starting a similar business. My son can start a similar business of what I'm doing, and I reduce my production. My son continues with doing the large production to supply my customers, to deny the Kenyans the revenue they so deserve. Nothing stops it. I can say I'm the beneficiary of my factory, of my company. Then I'll tell my son, start another similar one. Nothing bars him from doing so, and that will lead to what I'm talking about. But that is the discussion for another day. I'm sure we can take it up from there. Coming back to KEMSA, we've been discussing this issue, and everything has been done within the watch of the laws. We have all those set of laws, and it has happened in our country. And today, Kenya is suffering. I pity my good President Uhuru Kenyatta, who was so good nation for this country, but the people behind him are the ones who are letting him down. Well, Mike, let me tell you, it is the responsibility of those who are given the position by the president to work according to the law and to serve the Kenyans without their personal interest. I have been given a responsibility to make sure that Kenyans do not die because there is floods. I always drive all the way to Turkana without taking care of myself. And I say I'm going to Turkana to make sure that I want people come out from the Takwel Dam is about to overflow. I take that responsibility. People are not taking responsibilities. They are just minding about themselves. And this is where we are finding ourselves in this kind of a scenario. I am so disappointed to see things being mismanaged while people are seated in those offices given responsibilities, and the people who can do things better, like my good friend Odera is seated, is languishing in poverty out there. He has not recovered from losing his seat, and he is a man who can do something better in KEMSA. But we get people who are not willing to support Kenyans. I think my good friend Uhuru Kenyatta need to look at people who can serve Kenyans without their interest. It may be, he may not have a sticky yard to measure who can do better, but we know very well that once somebody has missed, you don't have to keep that person for a day or two. Get where there and put him there and let him do a good job for Kenyans.
All right,
gentlemen. There is nothing to discuss about.
Okay.
This is nothing to discuss about. It is taking action immediately. The people who have been given the responsibility by the president are the one letting him down.
Letting him down. All right, Honorable Mtambo, we're going to take a short break, and Honorable Odera, we are going to take a short break right here on Morning Express. And when we come back, let's also take a look at what's happening in the U.S. and maybe focus on what that means for us. Question that we're asking this morning is, do you think Donald Trump should concede defeat? He hasn't done that so far. Peter Wagashire says, yes, he should respect the millions of voters who voted against him. Donald Trump should accept defeat since America practiced democracy, not in Kenya, where systems are hacked in order to retain the current president in position during general election. That's from Shadrach. We have Akato Kevin, who says, of course, yes, 100%. Atulie mtaa akijifikiria kwanza why he went to history books as the one-term president. Quite a number of comments coming through, and we're going to be sampling them as we carry on. For now, we're going to take a short break, but do stay with us right here on Morning Express. We continue with more on the other side of the break.